This is the axolotl we use for studying bioluminescence, called a GFP axolotl. Hello, I'm Shafiq, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the glowing secrets that nature has hidden in the pond. And one of those secrets pertains to a very special amphibian, or as they're known in the scientific community, GFP axolotls. It means green fluorescent protein axolotls. And of course, as a certified biology enthusiast, I've done my fair bit of research on these fascinating creatures, right? Just off the top of my head, I've studied axolotls, jellyfish, and even some bioluminescent bacteria, so I know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to GFP axolotls, whether you're just looking for a unique pet or a subject for scientific study, it is worth learning that these glowing amphibians aren't necessarily the same as their non-glowing counterparts. And so without further ado, let's metaphorically dive into the pond as I uncover the ways that GFP axolotls are very different from regular axolotls. You know, when I first laid eyes on a GFP axolotl, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, here was this adorable salamander looking all cute and smiley, but with an added twist. It was glowing. Not like a light bulb, mind you, but with this ethereal green luminescence that made it look like it had just stepped out of a sci-fi movie. Sarah, what do you mean by that? Well, here's how GFP axolotls glow. We'll get into the science later, but basically, under normal light, they look pretty much like regular axolotls. But shine a black light on them, and bam! They light up like a Las Vegas sign, only much cuter and less likely to empty your wallet. In the world of regular axolotls, I don't know why my hand is still up there. Things are a little bit different because that same axolotl would just look, well, normal under any light. They come in various colors like white, black, gold, or even a mottled mix, but none of them naturally glow. So the floor immediately above regular axolotls in terms of coolness is definitely the GFP variety. And then you get to wondering, how on earth did scientists create these glowing wonders? And this is where those scientific differences really take shape, or should I say genes, because there's one key rule. GFP axolotls have been genetically modified to produce the green fluorescent protein. And the reason for this, as we all know, is that scientists are always looking for new ways to study biological processes. But it's also because GFP, which originally comes from jellyfish, is an incredibly useful tool in scientific research. And so we just sort of cram it into other organisms, in fact, quite cleverly. A tiny GFP jellyfish was where this whole glowing protein adventure started, and scientists were so excited about it that they started putting GFP into all sorts of creatures. They were staying up late in labs about the size of this studio, which surprisingly, given that I'm often dubbed America's finest biology nerd, is not that big. And at the best of times, I don't like being in close proximity to too many test tubes. But being squashed in a lab with future Nobel Prize winners was the second most exciting experience of my life. And I know what you're thinking. Ooh, Sarah, what was the first? Seeing my first GFP axolotl glow under a black light, of course. You see, GFP axolotls, like many genetically modified organisms, are just bigger in terms of scientific importance. I mean, they'd have to be, right? Especially given what we've discovered on this channel about the differences in genetic research applications. And of course, a GFP axolotl is not the only glowing creature in the scientific world. In addition to axolotls, we've got GFP mice, zebrafish, and in desperate times of scientific curiosity, even GFP monkeys, which should prompt nobody to ask me about the glowing banana incident of 2010. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, Sarah, the GFP protein makes things glow green. Well, firstly, that's not always true. And secondly, that's not where I was going with this. I was actually going to mention the different colors, because while green is the original GFP color, scientists have now developed variants that glow in different colors like blue, yellow, and red. To go from green to other colors, they often have to kind of tweak the protein structure. There's one thing to remember: getting the right color, but getting it to express strongly enough to be visible, it could lead to an unintentionally hilarious lab report. In fact, I do have footage of a failed attempt at making a rainbow axolotl, but I can't show it on here because I get hundreds of complaints and an equal number of research grant proposals, so just take my word for it. GFP axolotls are of course found in many places and through much of our scientific lives, but never more do I need them than when I'm studying regeneration. So because of this, It is worth remembering some of the key differences between GFP and non-GFP axolotls in regeneration studies. Don't take my word for it. Instead, listen to me from last year. It was once said by me in just a second from now that you can tell a lot about a regeneration process by the glow of its cells. And given its unparalleled record of regrowing body parts, the axolotl might fancy its chances of winning the my regenerations better than your regeneration debate. But the truth is, and you might find this shocking, GFP axolotls make this process much easier to observe. You can't talk about GFP axolotls without talking about fluorescence microscopy. Fluorescence microscopy is the technique that allows us to see the glowing proteins in action, like a docked spaceship in a sci-fi movie. And the only reason I made a sci-fi sim there was to draw your attention to the miniature alien landscape I made from Petri dishes while I was bored. Anyway, there are several key differences in this department. On GFP axolotls, the fluorescence is ever so slightly brighter and crucially more specific. This makes them invaluable for tracking cellular processes. How do I know that? Because I've spent countless hours staring at glowing axolotl cells under a microscope. But whereas regular axolotls, that is non-GFP axolotls, are decidedly non-glowing, that's not always the case with other organisms. Sure, some deep-sea creatures, the ones whose habitats look like surprised ghosts in the dark, definitely do have natural bioluminescence, but GFP organisms, which are easily the more outgoing and competitive of the two, are bioengineered due to the manner in which scientists insert the GFP gene into their DNA. There's also a difference in how they're used in research. In regular axolotls, we might use dyes to track cellular processes, thus making it harder to observe long-term changes without affecting the organism. And the genetic modification of GFP axolotls means that you can do this in theory for the entire lifespan of the animal, but it's not recommended to keep them under black light constantly. One of the biggest concerns for scientists studying GFP axolotls, aside from being forced to explain to their non-scientist friends why they're so excited about glowing salamanders, is the great GFP expression divide. In GFP axolotls, protein expression is categorized as stable, while it's generally variable in other GFP organisms. Moreover, GFP axolotls express the protein in all their cells, while other organisms might only express it in specific tissues. What does all of this mean? Well, let's just say that you want to use GFP axolotls to study nerve regeneration, but the GFP isn't expressing strongly in nerve cells. In that instance, you'll need to run to the genetics lab to pick up some stronger promoters. A promoter will boost the expression of GFP in the cells you're interested in. In the event that your promoter doesn't come with a specific tissue target, be sure to also pick up one of these. This tissue-specific promoter is magic. It allows you to turn your general GFP expression into a targeted tissue-specific glow. For scientists studying other organisms, the same applies, but in reverse. A different fluorescent protein or a combination of colors might also be needed to safely distinguish different cell types. Both are widely available for scientists on specialized laboratory supply websites. I'd say the most obvious difference between GFP and non-GFP axolotls is the glow. When I first saw a GFP axolotl under a black light, I couldn't believe how bright it was. And not in a wow, that's a smart axolotl type way. I mean, this was a genetically modified organism that was literally glowing. But in regular axolotls, you don't usually have that problem or luxury because a significant amount of regular axolotls are either not glowing or not glowing well. This is a particular problem when you're trying to track specific cells in a regenerating limb. As with many areas of life, GFP axolotls are their own subgenre of scientific terminology. Take, for instance, the name that we assign to that helpful protein that makes them glow when you're checking them under a microscope. In the scientific community and much of the rest of the world, this protein is known as green fluorescent protein. This is the term we use for what non-scientists might call that glowy green stuff. Also, whether it's situated in the cell membrane or the nucleus, scientists and non-scientists also can't agree on what you call that area of the cell that glows brightest. In science, we usually opt for the word fluorophore. Please note that non-scientists, just like viewers on my most recent live stream, are divided on whether this should be pronounced fluorophore or fluorophore. Either way, non-scientists will often call this area the glowy bit. More often than not, scientists will call a GFP axolotl a transgenic axolotl. Non-scientists will call a transgenic axolotl a glowing axolotl, while scientists have about 100 words for different types of fluorescent proteins. Chief among these are CFP, cyan fluorescent protein, YFP, yellow fluorescent protein, RFP, red fluorescent protein, or BFP, blue fluorescent protein. And finally, in vivo imaging. This is something I've encountered far more in GFP axolotl studies than I have in regular axolotl research. This is an imaging technique offered in labs in which you observe cellular processes in a living organism. But the use of in vivo might be confusing to some non-scientists. You might think of vivo as related to vivacious or vivid, which coincidentally perfectly describes these glowing axolotls that I somehow keep mentioning in my videos just by coincidence. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below some of the GFP organism differences that you've encountered. I'm Sarah Green. You can follow me on Twitter at glowing-science, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. Thank you to my patrons for literally making this video happen. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so today at patreon.com/glowing-science. Until the next video, goodbye.